Characteristics, if you will, of a high-performance WFO versus a low one. This is sort of pulling out stuff from the survey. You have flexible policies, procedures, teamwork, open communication, focus on performance, goals set and track, strong customer orientation, emphasis on innovation, trust and respect, good relations with the union. You sort of put that all together and you get highly accurate warnings and lower sick leave. And then at the other end of the spectrum, not saying that any one office fits either one of these. This is sort of the extremes. Rigid policies and procedures, unresolved conflict, climate of fear, lack of empowerment, poor sense of goals, lack of customer focus, resistance to change, ignorance of diversity issues, and poor relations with the union. So those are sort of the, to draw a very sharp distinction. So perhaps what's going on is the following, that basically Weather Service is an agency which is constantly trying to avail itself of new innovation and change, science and technology. So in the high performance WFO, they sort of, because they don't have these internal human relations problems due to their culture, they can sort of grab that innovation and rapidly implement it and quickly see the results and improve performance, whereas the low performance WFO is slow to get into implementation and slow to improve. So you sort of have a lag. That's why, sort of with time, the science and technology benefits permeate throughout the offices, but they happen much faster at the offices with this high performance culture. So could we get that in all the offices? So again, this was a snapshot in 2003. And as I said, I put this on the shelf until recently. Actually, in the fall, I started looking at it again. So what about the cultural index? Now, what's happened since 2003? So what I did was I just looked at the top third of the offices in cultural index, the bottom and the middle third, and plotted both back in time and forward. And this is what you see. So, and this is basically, the study was done here, and so the results were mostly valid at this time. So what you see is that even going into the future and backwards into the past, that these 16, 17 offices that answer those questions like that were always doing better, and they're still doing better consistently. And even when we made the transition from county-based warnings to storm-based warnings, they handled that one and still sort of managed to come out on top. So that's rather impressive. If you had asked me over, from 1996 to 2009, tell me which 16 offices in the Weather Service are going to do the best in tornado that entire year, and you told me, I'll give you 3 questions off of a survey, we'll tell you that, I would have said, what? You're crazy. That can't possibly be true. If you look at POD specifically, you can see that it's a much closer story. I mean, the top offices in the culture index seem to do better, particularly more recently here after the transition. Not a big difference, though. Now, this paper, some of you may have read this one, Simmons and Sutter, 2009. We have found strong evidence that a higher local recent FAR significantly increases tornado fatalities and injuries, justifying its use as a performance metric for the NWS. This is a very interesting paper. I'm still digesting it. But the bottom line is that they're saying that FAR is an important metric. And as I showed at the very beginning, the false alarm of the top on the culture is also, this is where they seem to be really, really outstanding. And the other two there's not much difference. So it's almost like having this elite group, really, really good culture. The rest are sort of basically at the same level. And if you accept the conclusion of Simmons and Sutter, then you would say, well, this is going to result in less fatalities and deaths. Again, I'm not sure I've bought into that yet, but it's a significant thing if it's true. So it almost goes and says, well, culture in the offices has an impact on whether people get injured or die. Now that's kind of hard to get your handle on, but it seems there's a connection. could be. Lead time, you don't see that much. More recently, I guess there's seems to be the top 10 offices seem to be doing, or the top third in the culture index are doing better in the lead time. If you break it out by the F0s and F1s, again, you don't see much. And this is the F2s, F5s, the significant tornadoes. Lead time, again, and this is showing the statistics are dominated by the small tornadoes. And the lead time for the F2s and F8. You can't get the FAR with those numbers. In terms of tornado events, they all get about the same. There's no real, a lot of tornadoes occurring in the top third of the culture index more than the other group. I looked at this one too, so here's Tornado Alley. If you just look at the offices in this definition of Tornado Alley compared to these, this is what you see. Because some of the offices are in Tornado Alley, but not all of them, the Tornado Alley still doesn't outperform. If you look at another definition of Tornado Alley, you see the same thing. It's a slightly different, not much difference, but still. Okay, now this book has come out, Gary Allen Fine, Authors of the Storm. So this is a very fascinating book. If you haven't read it, I highly commend you read it. It's just a wonderful example of how somebody, by just listening to people talk, can pick up on so much. So he went and spent time in like 3 WFOs over a number of years, and basically wrote a book on the culture in weather service at WFOs. And he came here. He was back in D.C. He says, I argue that any orientation towards science and work is created by groups and their own shared past. Local conditions matter. So that seems to be showing up in our results. Group cultures, influence standards of occupational practice. Different cultures have distinct effects even when tasks are ostensibly similar. So that's exactly what we have here. Tornado warnings are the exact same task, but the cultures are having a distinct effect. And to the point where it may affect the end result and whether the public is better served or less better served. Idiocultures can reverberate long after the original participants have departed. Well, this is really an interesting one that I don't know how we get a handle on that. The other thing he points out, he was in Chicago. That's the only one in his book that's identified specifically, and found this very strong culture, as he calls it. And there was one of the anonymous offices also a WFSO before the modernization. So you had these mega offices that had forecast responsibility as well as some warning responsibility. And then the rest were these just smaller offices that had only warning responsibility. And then after the modernization, they all became WFOs, which had both. So the question is, did their office history affect their culture and therefore affect their performance? So you can see the former WFSOs over this time after the modernization, but going forward, seemingly a little bit lower performance, and that the WSOs, who are now WFOs, are slightly better, but neither are better than the collective group of the top on this cultural index.